Oi, oi, hello and welcome back to our Cheltenham Festival preview. I'm joined by Will Smith. For which bookie we are looking at day 2 of the Cheltenham Festival. Now, if you haven't already seen day 1, you can check out that video by subscribing to our channel and looking through our list of videos. Make sure you drop a like on the video because it helps us. Drop a comment if you feel that way inclined. But we'll crack on, Will, with Wednesday day 2's racing, which this year looks extra special. I do think as the week goes on, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it gets a little bit trickier for punting perspectives, and it's definitely the case in the opener. Or is it? The Turners Novices Hurdle is a race where we've got Final Demand that slammed his rivals in the Dublin Racing Festival, and he's at a 7-4 favourite. We've got the New Lion, who's created a hell of an impression from these runs this season, especially in that Cheltenham Hurdle, who's been knocked off his perch for favouritism and is now out to 3-1. I say out to 3-1. He was just probably a little bit short in the first instance. We've got Kawabunga, whose form is being franked left, right and centre at the moment. Another runner for JP. Did he need to buy the New Line if Kawabunga was going to win this, you could ask? And then you've got the Yellow Clay for Gordon Elliott that's in here, who Gordon said all season will come to this race, but he is prominent in the Albert Bartlett betting, and when you look at the exchanges, you wouldn't definitely know which way this horse was going. Potter's Charm's going to come here again after a disappointing run last time out, but look, it's not implausible to see him putting that behind himself. James's Gate will come in now instead of going for a Coral Cup. Couldn't get the extra run in there, so I like that horse, but I don't think he'll be winning this. So I've probably gone far enough down the list, I think, in my opinion, Will. But it's a fascinating contest to see how this one pans out. I can keep this one fairly brief because there's a chance that the horse doesn't come here, but I really think the Yellow Clay is something special. The way that Gordon's always talked about this horse, when he had his first season over bumpers, he said if he was trained by someone else, they'd probably be sending him over the flat. He's that quick. He had his second season in bumpers last year, but he must have met with some sort of setback because the plan was always to go hurdling. So as much as he was beaten in those 3 runs last year, I think they just did well to get him on a race course and to run to that sort of level, finishing second behind Redemption Day, the absolute bumper specialist, I think actually is pretty good form. And all his runs this season as well, for all that his second run, he only won by a short distance, they've all been pretty impressive. He showed loads of speed in that second run for all that it was a short distance winning margin. And he's been running on softish ground as well. And I think he just looks like a horse. And Gordon's even said it himself. He's a horse that wants better ground. It's Lawler's of Nace run. It was really testing grounds there, and he's absolutely slammed them all. I just think this horse looks like a very, very, very good horse. And it just happens to be that it is a very deep renewal this year. But I think Gordon knows this is the right race for him to go into. And regardless of the fact that there is depth in there, if Gordon decides that he's going to stick him in against this lot, I would say that's a massive vote of confidence from him. He's the 4th favourite of the ones that we've got in the ranking at the moment, but I could see this horse going off sort of 7-2, 4-1 if they do decide to come here. So I've already bet him non-runner money back anyway. I still think he does come to this race, and I think if Gordon sends him, he's got a hell of a chance. So yeah, the Yellow Clay is where I'm siding with this one, but obviously I fully respect Final Demand. He's a big horse. He looks like an Albert Bartlett type. If he had one more run, Willie would definitely be sending him to the Bartlett, is my take on that one. The New Lion, I poo-pooed a little bit after the Challow, thinking he was the favourite to take on at that stage when he was a 2-1 poke. The closer we get into it, and you look at this and thinking, do you need a fast horse to win a Turner's? He's starting to come further forward on there, but I still don't believe that his form is anything above his official rating, which is 147, which typically would not be good enough to win a Grade 1. And it's all well and good being the miles clear of the Brits over here, but it's like being the tallest of the 7 dwarfs, isn't it? It's got to be up against who you're going against. And this looks a real deep Turners as well. So the Kawabunga's form's being franked. Loads of people talk about him as well. It's just like it's a really juicy, exciting race to get stuck into. I can't completely and utterly pick it apart, but like I say, I'm sort of biased with the Yellow Clay, and if he does come here, that's where I'm going to side. So have you been able to piece this one apart with any more conviction, Will?
I wouldn't be categorical on what I think is going to win it at this stage, because I think there's just 1 or 2 things to still clear up. I mean, obviously with the New Lion and Kawabunga, they're both JP McManus owned. Kawabunga hasn't ever raced beyond 2 miles yet. Could he be a player in the Supreme if they wanted the New Lion and him split up? I don't know if that's going to be a thing. I mean, JP is quite happy to run more than one in a race if they feel it's the right race for both of them. That has happened many times previously. But I can't see an obvious runner for them in the Supreme other than Kawabunga. I know he has been well supported for this. Might well be that, the New Lion has been a bit of a decoy all along and Kawabunga's the one. Who knows? I don't know. But I think I'd echo your sentiments with regard to Final Demand. He's very, very good, and what he did at the Dublin Racing Festival was pretty spectacular again. Not quite as spectacular as Copec de Board, but in his own more, attritional way, he kind of just kept galloping. And but like you said, he's quite a big type, edged a little bit right when in the open. The Ballymore, the Turners now, as it's called, is a bit more of a speed test, isn't it? The Dublin Racing Festival race was over 2 mile, 6 furlongs. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think if he wins it, then he wins on raw ability, his absolute raw ability, as opposed to being absolutely suited to the race. So I could see some bigger priced options coming into it. And it's interesting that the Yellow Clay, his form with Wingmen and Jasmine DeVoe, very similar if you go in just on a collateral form line to what Final Demand did to those two horses in respect to what the Yellow Clay did to them. So I don't think there should be quite the discrepancy in the market between those two. I think you're right with that. And I think there's probably one, just looking a little bit further down at those at slightly bigger prices, that I'm definitely keeping an eye on for the race. And that's Ollie Murphy's Fingal Bridge, who was a really good winner at Exeter over nearly 2.25 miles in a listed race, in a race that I think was quite deep. It was run in a good time. He beat Regent Stroll into second, who seems to be one of a truckload of Paul Nicholls horses that people love to crab because he cost $1 million, but is actually still a very good horse, because I think the third, fourth and fifth are very good horses in their own right as well. Now, Ollie Murphy has, from a long time out, said this horse is going nowhere near Cheltenham. He's going to go to Aintree, etc., etc. If that's the case, why has he entered? And you look at the ownership as well, the McNeils, they just love runners at Cheltenham, don't they? And I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be suited to Cheltenham. Yeah, he's a nice horse, seems fairly balanced. He's a big old type, but he seemed to handle Exeter fine. So if he turned up in this, he might be a small each way play. You might get extra places, should I say, on the day. I don't think he's a million miles off those at the top of the market in terms of what he's actually done on the track.
Ooh, I like it. And when we normally say you should never be scared of one horse, and I've mentioned that this feels like a real deep renewal, there's a chance. There's a chance that we get the fly in the ointment that gets thrown in. And that's sometimes what can happen, can't it? Where you do get a race where it's easy to stick at the front of the market because there's a lot of substance there, but sometimes we can get lazy and not look a bit further down. So that's definitely an interesting one. He was good in that race when I took on Regent Stroll there with what was the Tizardy horse? Can't remember the name of it now. Yeah, and that was the wrong thing to do, but it was.
Well, I guess right. Yeah, I think your thinking was right, because I think he's a good horse, and I also think the third is a good horse, Julius de Picton. I think that kind of race is the classic type of race where you've got one or two trainers who perhaps aren't the big mainstream trainers, but they've got the crop of their young novice hurdlers that are improving. And the time of the race, like I said, was really good. I think those types of races are really nice ones to latch onto, because they won't be the obvious ones that are always talked about.
Yeah, and then if he does not go to this race and he gets saved for Aintree, then that's the Aintree preview sorted, because they've kept him fresh. That's the angle in.
But just clip this up and then we'll regurgitate it.
But that's the good thing with this, because we will have lots of thoughts, but there are those, like the extra stepping stones, like I mentioned with James's Gate. I think he was going to go Coral Cup if they could have run him last time, so I'd fancy him in a handicap if they don't go down that route after, but it'll blow his mark if he runs closer near. I love this race, because in the past where we've had like Yanworth and York Hill going at it from the turn in, and then you had City Island and Champ going at it as well. Like, as much as it is this 2 mile 5, and we've had some like attritional versions of it in recent years with bad ground, they can get racing a long way from home, can't they? So I'm fascinated to see how long Harry Skelton is travelling on the new line, because it won't be like the Turners, I don't think, where he'll travel to the last. They'll be getting at it a long way from home. This is going to be such a good race. I just pray that they all stand there going. The Cowabunga thing going to the Supreme is very interesting. I hadn't really thought about that. Although he has been, I guess, a bit strong on this one on the exchanges, but there's plenty of time for things to change, isn't there? It could be a real deep one then, but I don't think Willie's going to run Farm Demand in the Albert Bar because he hasn't got enough experience, but I still think that's where he should go. There could be a world where it's just the new Lion in here, and then that's where, like you say, Ollie Murphy's got the entry and something else comes in. Right, I'm definitely waffling too much on the Turners. I'm getting excited, Will, because it's a good-looking race, isn't it? Should we move on?
Yeah, definitely.
Right, we're looking at now the Brown Advisory Novices Chase, the Grade 1. This has been a big benefactor of the fact that the 2.5 mile race has been changed to a handicap now. Ballyburn heads the market, and you'd have to say rightly so, given the fact of what he's done throughout his career, not just this season. Having the stones to go to Kempton to take on Sergino, you could quite easily see at the start of the season that you've got the two best chasers, regardless of their trip, would have been Ballyburn and Sergino, I think, for most people. Like, we could probably throw a few others in the mix. And then Willie Munners decides to test if he's going to be fast enough at 2 miles to take on the one that's like next in the pecking order and going to throw away £6 on really quick ground. Like, that is the testament to the horse. For him to get as close as he did to Sergino, he's clearly a weapon. There's every reason to think that he will stay. And although this is a race that typically goes to a horse that has got form at the trip, because the middle distance race has gone, I wouldn't hold it against him that he hasn't tried 3 miles yet. So I think he looks pretty solid. I thought his run last time was really good because it looked educational at the same time as being impressive. And what I mean by that is his sort of slower jumping. They've had to go from running breakneck speeds against Sergino to, you got to settle this horse over 2 mile 5 that it was there. And you can't really ask them to jump as quickly for that longer time because it's not fair to the horse for them to understand that they've got to sustain the gallop. So I thought it was a perfect performance at Dublin Racing Festival, and he was pretty much a length down, wasn't he, when they jumped the last, and then put 5 lengths between himself and the second. It was I thought it was a phenomenal effort. I think there's every reason to think that he wins this race. I think the 7-4 about him is a fair price. But there is another horse that I've had on my radar for this for a long time, and I think if the original 2.5 mile race was here, Ballyburn would have been going for that. And I think that regardless of whether that race was here or not, Better Days Ahead would have been coming to the Brown Advisory. His Martin Pipe win was good. And for all that his run last time wasn't really very flashy because his stablemate, he was getting weight from, closed in on him. And then even the horse that made a mistake, was it 3 Car Bragg, he closed in on him a little bit towards there. But I don't want to say he's an idle horse because that's not positive to say that I think he'll go and win a Grade 1 at the Cheltenham Festival, but he didn't get taken along for as long as he needed to. And going against a horse like Ballyburn of his calibre, he's going to get such a long toe into this race. And then I think when he gets to the hill at Cheltenham like last year, he just eats it up. So if there's any small chink in Ballyburn's armour in terms of a stamina test or any of those sort of things, I think the only horse that will expose that is Better Days Ahead from a class perspective. Dancing City, I think, is one of the worst prize horses of the entire week, which will probably come back to bite me on the bum. But he's a 3-1 poke, and he needs a bog as far as I'm concerned. He was getting weight from the mare last time, and everything went right from the Albert Bartlett last year, and he got beat. So I know he's got some really good form and about this trip, but I don't think he's in the class of a Ballyburn or even a Better Days Ahead. So I think it's between Ballyburn and Better Days Ahead. I've bet both of them. I can't see the winner coming from anything else. Am I wrong, Will?
I don't think you are. No, I think they're the two for me as well. And I think, I mean, we talked on the day one preview about various shorties, likes of Kopeck de Board and Majbra, and then Mayor's Hurdle and Champion Hurdles, etc., and various accumulators that people might want. I think at the current prices, 7-4 top price about Ballyburn. You know, scrap all those multiples. Just save your money and put it on that, I think. I mean, that's a brilliant price. I think about the horse who reminds me quite a lot of Bobsworth, the way that Bobsworth used to do things. Probably a classier version of Bobsworth, actually, in that he's been able to win graded races over hurdles at around about 2 miles, 2.5 miles. This is Ballyburn. But everything he does, to me, he just looks like he's going to be... I mean, he's a Gold Cup horse, isn't he? I think, without a shadow of a doubt, Ballyburn. He looks like the further he goes, the better he gets, but he's also very, very classy to boot. I think he's comfortably the best of these. The one horse that would give him a race, I think, might be running in the Arkle, which is Django Bay. So, you know, more of that maybe later if there's a switcheroo, but I strongly think he could be a potential Gold Cup horse somewhere down the line as well. But might not be that we get the matchup here that could be interesting. So for me, 7-4 Ballyburn, in terms of, you know, shorter priced horses at the meeting, I mean, I'd have him a stronger fancy than all of those various odds on shots or close to even money on day one. I think Ballyburn is one of the best priced, short priced horses of the whole meeting at this stage.
Oh, I love it, Will. This is why we do these things together, isn't it? Confirmation bias. But I echo your sentiments as well. Even after the Dublin Racing Festival, you get the wake and you think, oh, what price are they going to chalk him up off the back of that? And I was thinking, I always like to try and feel like I'm sneaking a bit extra as well. I was thinking, if they make him 6-4, then you've got to bet him. And they've made him 2-1. And I'm thinking, all right, maybe I need to go back and watch this back. Then you watch it back and think, Christ, maybe he should have been even money. But he definitely looks like a good price, doesn't he? I think in terms of one of those there, everything's got its relative chance, isn't it? But his chance, I think, is much greater than the price that he is, and that's essentially the concept of value, isn't it? I'd say if you run this race 10 times, he definitely wins more than 3 of them. That's what's crazy about it. He'd win at least 5 of them, I would imagine. So you'd put him close to an even money poke. So of course, gamble responsibly, but all in on Ballybur, and then a little save on better days ahead. Right, We'll take a look at the Coral Cup handicap now. So I haven't mentioned this for day 2 just yet, but we will be doing a live preview on Sunday the 9th on the Which Bookie channel. So make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel for that. At the moment, we've got the handicap entries. We haven't got the weights, so it does make a difference in how we're going to view things. But we want to let you guys know our thoughts at this juncture. And then when it comes to that Sunday preview, we'll still cover all the other races. We'll still tell you to get stuck into Ballyburn, but we'll have stronger views on these handicaps. So, like I say, make sure you stay tuned for that. But Will, as it stands, I get to be the person that gets to say his name first. Kopek Demi has an entry in the Coral Cup, County Hurdle, Martin Pipe. I don't want to dwell on him too much because I'd rather talk about him in the race that I think I would say would be his first preference. But I'd rank his preferences in, I'd say Martin Pipe, Coral Cup, and then County. So I don't know where he's going to go. They probably do, but they won't tell anyone, will they? But it looks like on the way that they do the French ratings over to this, he'll be rated 136, I think. He looks like he's probably thrown in the money that's coming behind him. He's going to go off short wherever. And the reason I wanted to mention him now is I think I've done the same thing as many people have done, because we have got non-runner money back for lots of bookie firms. We don't know which race he goes in, but when it is confirmed, he's going to shorten up. So I've just bet him for all 3, being the sensible person that I am, that I think the way that the sort of the hype's come around him, he's going to go off, I would imagine, sort of 3-1 wherever he goes. So I don't know where he's going to go. He's worth mentioning for the fact that there has been a bit of money around him. But I mean, anyone that's trying to tip him on anything other than the hype and conspiracy is a braver person than me, because I haven't done a case on his French form yet. But this race does look decent. We'll have to basically just see if Langadan does run in here, because he's picked it up the last twice, isn't he? But what a middle finger that'll be to the handicapper if he manages to win this off of 158. But the yard have got Be Aware, that looks the obvious, like, I guess, profile-y type horse for this one. The Coral Cup is a race where you could look at trendy bits, but in recent years you've had a few horses that have thrown a spanner in the works to there. So I wouldn't get too caught up in there, but again, I'll use it if it boosts the case of my selection to make myself sound better. But Be Aware looks like the right type for this. My biggest concern with him, when he ran in that Greatwood earlier this season, I think everything went probably right for him. He just couldn't get to Burdett Road given the weight conditions of that day, and he lost very little in defeat. But Harry Skelton's mentioned a few times, and I noticed it in his racing styles, that this horse has got his sort of own ideas of doing things, and he can sulk a little bit. So he mentioned that as much as the Coral Cup is the target for him, he's the type of horse that if he got knocked into by another horse at a hurdle, he might decide to throw the towel in. And that scared me for him to, like, why would you even offer that information unless it needed to be said? So I've got caution around him, but I think he deserves to be towards the front, and I think I'd give him a bit of a chance. There's a few others in here that I'm not sure I'd be as confident about. Outerbelly with a £10 rise, I think's like frozen him, and he arguably is better right-handed, but that's not fully substantiated, despite the fact he's won like right-handed the last twice. But I can see he's short enough. I think he is just that, probably too short. Super Sunday as well. They all got excited for him for the Dublin Race Festival, didn't they? And I don't buy into that horse in the slightest. But maybe Willie Mullins is going to make me look like an idiot, and he's going to pull off something with that horse. But I think he looks way too short. The one that I thought was worth a mention at a bit of a price is Beau Zenith for Nicky Henderson, because you do have to start to reach a little bit with his form to say that he's well handicapped on the bulk of it, I probably think is the fair way to say it. But he was very eye-catching at the start of this season, having been well backed as well, to be fair, after a significant layoff. I don't think it was so much the bounce factor at Ascot, but he bumped into Outerbelly when Outerbelly was still well handicapped, and he didn't run terribly in there. But obviously was just nowhere near as good as that horse. And it would, like I say, wouldn't scream out that he is that well handicapped, but he's got bits of form when you go back to when he was trained by Gary Moore. Like his second to Zenta at Aintree looks quite good, because Zenta's not a bad horse, was 7th in the county last year off a 145, and this horse is still rated in the 130s. Nicky Henderson does all right in this race as well. I just think Beau Zenith people are probably not forgiven, or as forgiven of his last one as they probably should be. He was sent off sort of joint favourites without betting in that Ascot race, and obviously one went and won and is up sort of £15 now, and the others stayed on the same mark. So he's 16 to 1 non-runner money back. I thought Bo Zenith was one that I could start to make a bit of a case for, but could all be pointless if Kopek Demi comes here, Will, couldn't it?
It could, yeah. I mean, he's the kind of horse for me that my first thought was these handicap markets at this stage, and certainly when he was shortening up for these races last week and the week before, is it going to take a huge amount of money to shorten prices about that type of horse in these handicap markets? I mean, there was only a handful of bookies that were priced up with some of the handicaps at that stage. So, and you look back at the past few festivals, it's littered with these types of horses that are either having their first start on UK shores. The groundswell of support, I imagine, is music to the ears of the bookmakers, really, because these are the types of horses they love to get beat. You look at Gallic Warrior, you look at Gentleman Demi when he came here off the back of just one run for Willie Mullins. Ben Pauling's Bad, who ran in the Fred Winter last year or a couple of years ago. Again, groundswell. He went off very short, or just on a whim, really. So look, for me, he's a decoy. He's just a decoy. I reckon there are going to be many other horses who are going to be better priced. There's going to be loads of talk about him, and we're going to be able to potentially get some bigger prices about other horses in various different races, really. So, particularly at the prices he is at now, happy to let him go and win whichever race he runs in. But I'll be looking to take him on, definitely. In the Coral Cup, I mean, it's the horses you've mentioned. Be Aware definitely catches the eye. It was a good run in the Greatwood, and at that stage you could get 16 to 1, 14 to 1 about him. And I was toying with the idea of backing him then for this particular race, but I wasn't sure that this was definitely his target. But as that's been confirmed, he's clipped in. And the more I look at the Greatwood hurdle form, I know Burdett Road has run really well in good races since. But you look further in behind, and it's not working out that great, I must admit. So he's a hard horse to catch right. I think he needs a genuine sound surface as well. So just a little bit wary of Be Aware. There's one horse that I thought was vaguely interesting, definitely at the prices here, because I'm slightly surprised that he's got the entry, which is Sandor Clegane for Paul Nolan, who has a really good festival record. They've shelved the fences idea. He ran a cracker, I thought, behind Factor File in the Brown Advisory last year. Wasn't too far behind Spillan's Tower in the Grade 1 3-mile chase at the Punchestown Festival. And all along, I don't think he's a stayer. I think he's a 2.5-mile horse all day long. They were talking about the National Hunt Chase at various moments. I was thinking, no, he doesn't properly get that far and stay that far. So the fact that he's got this one handicap entry at the whole festival, having had a couple of runs over hurdles, his mark's going to be high 140s, but he's a class animal on his day. He ran in the Grade 1 at Leopardstown's Christmas meeting. He ran in behind Rocky's Diamond in the Galmoy hurdle when never really put in the race, in a race that developed into a bit of a sprint. I think a well-run 2.5 miles around Cheltenham, a track that he's proved himself at before. I think he's an interesting proposition, Sandor Clegane.
I like that one, to be fair. It wouldn't have been one that was on my radar. It's a race we've got like 90 odd entries as well, isn't it? But this is why I think it is good, definitely, especially to talk horses at this stage, because I mean, he's an obvious shortener as well, especially with the non-runner money back market. And I know you mentioned about it, like potentially like a lofty-ish mark in there, but horses with high weights in this race have got a fantastic record. It tends to go to the classy ones. But Ballyadam was my one that Langadan ruined for me last year because I had him at 25s and then he got well supported. Sandor Clegane, after you said that, might just be the one that's like the almost obvious shortener, although he's not very obvious at the moment because not many people talk about him. Go on, Will. I love a bit of that. Thank you, mate. Right, we'll move on to the cross-country handicap chase. This is a different beast entirely to, obviously, the other handicaps. It's a very niche race. Obviously, like I say, a bit mild. It's very mild with the loss of Delta Work earlier this week as well. But it's a race that, because the conditions have changed back to a handicap, I have gone back and looked at what used to happen, because when it was first installed, I think there's maybe 10 or 11 run-ins where it was a handicap, and I just think that the nature of this race has changed since back then. And what I mean by that is, in between it being a handicap and it being this, it was just Gold Cup horses coming here and running. So when it used to be the handicap, I don't think as many like good horses would come in here. And now it is back as a handicap. I wonder if just the good horses are, like we always used to say, the proverbial graded horse in a handicap. I wonder whether they'll actually just fight it out and weight becomes less relevant. And I say all of that because it helps my case for the fact that Stumptown was another horse that I watched this season. When he did what he did to Mr. Coffee, which admittedly I know it's only Mr. Coffee, you just watch that and just think, I don't really care how much weight they give him off the back of that, because he had whatever he liked in hand. He looked like he'd just been thrown in after that last hurdle. Now, he did get an £8 rise. We're using the basis of what he's got for the Grand National to say that that's the mark that he'll get for this race. So Mr. Coffee would look incredibly well handicapped off the back of that. But Mr. Coffee's Mr. Coffee, isn't he? Never wins a race. And the thing with Stumptown is, Keith Donohue's got such a great record in this race anyway. He's going to be on top of him. He's excited about this horse. But the ride that he gave him, I remember watching it thinking, he doesn't know that Nico's there. And then obviously he did realise he was there. But you know when a horse wins in a canter like that, Will, and no one knows for definite how much they've got left under the bonnet. It's always a bit of conspiracy. And that's maybe where they can get a reasonable handicap mark. When he realised Mr. Coffee was there and he asked him to go, he looked like a 5 furlong sprinter. He quickened instantly. And then even after, when they crossed the line as well, like the horse was like, oh, you made me run and now you want to make me stop. Like he could have gone round again and again and again. So I think that Stumptown is like most certainly the most likely winner of the cross country for me. Certain horses do like this type of test. It's risky for the fact that it has changed to a handicap. When it wasn't a handicap, it was the graded races. I used to love getting stuck into these sort of 2-to-1 favourites because there was only a couple of them that could win it. Gordon's obviously got Galvin in here that he said he's got in really good form. He's exactly where he's supposed to be. The better the ground, the better his chances, what Gordon said about him. But I just think that Stumptown's run was so eye-catching that even though he's got a relative hike in the weights, I think they could have given him a stone and it wouldn't have made... I mean, it obviously does make a difference, but I don't think it would have made too much difference, especially in this type of discipline. You either get on jumping around the track with weight on your back or you don't. And I think he's going to be able to defy the penalty. He's 5-2, like non-runner money back best price at the moment. He's pushing sort of 3-1 on the exchanges. I think there's a world I can see where you do get a bit of a bigger price than him on the day, but I'm not adverse to him anything north of 2-1. I think he's a relatively strong bet. In terms of how much I would bet in point system for, say, something like a champion hurdle, where it could go up to 5-10 points, for example, as much as I'm going to get excited about a cross country, it would only ever be a couple of point type scenario. There's only so much money I'd invest in this, but I can't see how Stumptown gets beat, Will.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I'd say is I think Gavin Cromwell will train the winner. Whether it's Stumptown or not, though, I'm not entirely sure, because Vanillier, certainly at the prices right now, I think is a really good each way bet. Non-runner, no bet. It's been mooted he might go straight to the Grand National, but I don't think that's ever been the plan. I think he's been brought along this season with just chiseling his handicap mark down a few pounds, really, because he had headgear back on for the first time at Punchestown over the banks. If you go back to the first week of this month, February, that was the blinkers on for the first time. And you watch that race, the zest with which he went through that race on heavy ground, beating, some pretty solid cross-country horses, the likes of Cocoa Beach, Stealthy Tom, 3x2. I mean, he absolutely burnt them off with a manner that we hadn't seen from him for a fair while, actually, because he's been campaigned as a Grand National horse for the last couple of seasons. And it's not quite worked out. And I think they've realised with him, well, why are we basing our whole season around one race where suddenly it might go wrong in the blink of an eye? So I think that they probably have other targets in mind or other thoughts in mind this season. That Punchestown Banks race would have been one. And amazingly, the UK handicapper on the mark that he's given him in the Grand National is only, it's either the same or it's only up £1 or £2, despite what he did. Let me just check in here. 147. So he's given him £3 more, from 144 to 147. In respect to what he gave Stumptown, which I can understand because visually Stumptown's cross-country win back at the track this season was, mightily impressive. But he's given him £8 or £9 on the back of that. So for me, I think Vanillier is inherently a classier animal than Stumptown. He's running a whole host of graded races. He's won Grade 2s, Grade 3s. He's won at the Cheltenham Festival before. You look at Stumptown, he's never run in an open company graded race. He's made his way up through the ranks into handicaps and through there. And look, don't get me wrong, he looked brilliant at Cheltenham when he won. But I think when you look at the festival and look at what this race has become, I think Vanillier has always been a classier animal. He's a couple of years older, so, fair enough. But I think he's a cracking each-way bet, Vanillier. I really do. I think the blinkers will be on again. Keith Donoghue will probably choose Stumptown. That's fine. I think Johnny Burke rode Vanillier around the track when he had a bit of an acclimatising visit in behind Stumptown that day. Massive each-way price about Vanillier, I think.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that is fair case. Sort of tempered my enthusiasm slightly with Stumptown. And the thing with Stumptown as well is I backed him in the Kim Muir last year? No, a couple of years ago maybe. But I've backed him in the past at Cheltenham and he didn't quite get the job done in a festival.
Oh, he's run a cracker though at the last two festivals, hasn't he? Don't get me wrong. He turns up at the festival. It's not that I'm suggesting he's not going to go and win and Vanillier is going to wipe the floor with him by any stretch.
Oh,
but I just think there are various things which line up and price related as things are now. It has to be a bet on each way on Vanillier, each way for me.
Absolutely, yeah. Because I was semi-considering whether Mr. Coffee was worth a saver for the fact that we know that he'll be there or thereabouts, but we just know that Mr. Coffee is never going to win. You get the same price about Vanillier.
Just wait for the place market.
Well, that's it, yeah. And you get a 4th place with Vanillier, but at least the win part of his bet isn't necessarily dead, is it? So,
yeah.
Oh, well, very good there. But I mean, still pray for Stumptown. But like I say, it's a race I would never. I say never. I've had some good bets there, but when it's a handicap like this, there's only so excited I'd get about it. But I do think that it's hard to get past Stumptown. But good luck if someone beats him. Right, Queen Mother Champion Chase. This is a race, Will, that, given it's a championship race, it's been like a roller coaster, I suppose, is probably the best way to put it over the last few years, or especially since I've been following horse racing, because you've had some absolute worldies and godly names that have gone and won this race. You've had some horses that have made phenomenal comebacks, such as Sprinter Sacre and such. But I suppose more recently, it's been fraught with loads of really short price favourites suffering all sorts of different defeats. And Duvan did his hip one year, didn't he, when I think Special Tiara beat Fox Norton, and then you've had El Fabiolo last year that falls on and gets beat. Defi de Soy had the year where it just all fell apart and he was short priced and couldn't get it done. It's I don't know why, but for some reason it's always there. But obviously good horses, I guess in the National Hunt game, the objective probably is that people buy them for fences, like they're maybe looking at Gold Cup horses. Then when you get the real fast ones that's in there, it's testament to the depth, I guess is the best way to put it, that even when you get to a champion chase final and you get the prices that are put up by the bookies, that you don't get too many bad champion chase winners, because for all that people have been fortunate to win it in the past, you wouldn't begrudge any of them for actually being the standard of being a horse to win a champion chase. They're all grade 1 animals in their own right. So with that all said, getting that just out the way, we have to treat every race in isolation, right? We can't walk around with the cloud that all these 4s on shots have been beat, so John Bond will never win the race unless he's an odds against favourite, because surely this has to be one of the best opportunities for John Bond to get a Cheltenham Festival win that he's ever going to see. Yeah. And it's at a time where he's on an upward curve. He's been threatening, I think, at times to put in a real big figure at Cheltenham and hasn't done it. He's slower a couple of years ago when Nico took it up down the back. I was saying to a few friends I stood by him, I was like, if he does this all the way to the line, this is going to be like a 180s effort. And then it did peter out a little bit. It was like a high 160s. But he's like such a good horse. And the ones that potentially have the class to beat him that wouldn't be sort of like outliers to be etched in the trophy, given what's happened in the past as well, they can't do it to him this year. I just think it's like he's a good favourite. I don't know whether his price screams out to me that he's good value or not. I feel like he probably could be shorter, but then at the same time, if he was shorter, I'd say he was a terrible price. So I think he's probably sat about where he should be, especially in comparison to all the other favourites we're talking about. And that's not just because of the record in this race. But when you look at the ones in behind, Gaelic Warriors just look like a fraud this year. I know he's been really weak in the markets, But if you've got if you've got a champion chaser, but typically if you've got a grade 1 animal, you're out trying week in, week out. You're not saving him just for Cheltenham as seemingly people are thinking he's done with Gaelic Warrior. And for all his Arkle was a good performance last year, and not to crab any of the horses that are in behind, it was a pants Arkle. They went to crawl. He did out sprint them, but he's still that horse that was favourite for a Stayers hurdle last year. So I don't see him being a threat to John Bon, even if he had been in good form this season. So I can eat my words when that one happens, I suppose. Ile France, they want to go Ryanair. They're trying to put Factor File off, aren't they? They've got to go Ryanair. I wouldn't give him much chance in here because as much as he goes out like the Clappers, going out like the Clappers in an actual championship race over 2 miles, it just doesn't do him any benefit. It just helps everyone else, I think. So I wouldn't give him a 5-1 chance that he is. And Nergamine does love Cheltenham. And the wetter it gets, the more I'd say that he could bridge the gap with John Bon. He has put in 170's efforts, but I think it needs that. It needs to be soft or slower for a Nergamine to come into the equation. But if it is soft, a Nergamine at 7-1 would look an absolute knocking each way bet for all that he's 11. He's a 2-time champion chaser. It wouldn't clearly wouldn't be a shock if he got himself involved. And Marine Nationale, I think, like Barry Connell keeps saying, is the best of the challenge because he's looked good at Christmas, although I made excuses for him because of the way he was on the track. And then last time up behind Solness, I thought he should have won, and then he didn't win. And then I felt like I wanted to stop making excuses for him. His form does seem to be good on better ground, but he won a soft ground supreme, doesn't it? But then I get to that point and I think to myself, I'm trying to say that Marine Nationale is the biggest danger to John Bon, and now I think 5-6 looks massive. So, Will, I need a little bit of help to sort of get some clarity on this one. Have I got right reason to be nervous of steaming into John Bon, or do you think he warrants the price that he is, and do you think he actually will get the job done?
Yeah, I think he warrants the price he is, and that's twofold, really. It's what he's done, the credibility he's built up, rightly so, and also the opposition have got question marks about all of them, really, haven't they? I think there are 4 or 5 horses that on their day could give him a race, but they haven't shown that day for a while, or they've had issues and probably won't show that day again. It's or are ground dependent, in the shape of maybe Gaelic Warrior and perhaps Energamine. So I think it's John Bon's race to lose, really. I think what you could get here is a real strong tempo as well, which, if anything, I think should even produce a bigger performance from John Bon. It's kind of something he's been crying out for in a lot of these graded races that he's been winning. It is something actually to take him into the race. On occasions, he's had to do his own donkey work. So, yeah, it's not a betting race for me. Certainly not at the minute. Again, might be similar to some of those on day one. Look into the without markets as we get closer to the day. If it is looking like it's going to be populated by a lot of those front runners, the likes of Solness, Ile France, perhaps 1 or 2 other horses that have gone forward, perennially, then you could see the likes of Master Chewy and Liberty Hunter maybe sneaking a place or sneaking into the frame. They both ran well, obviously, at Newbury in the Game Spirit. They will both enjoy the tempo of that type of race. They could pick up a few pieces, but not going to beat John Bon. And Marine Nationale he is getting better with each start, but there's just something with me that every time he comes under pressure, he just he kind of puts his head a bit at a funny angle in the air, as if he has to go right to the very last drop of petrol in the tank. I don't think the response is going to be there with Marine Nationale. I think he's had his issues in the past, and it just, I don't know. Against Solness last time out, like you said, he could have come through and won that race, I think, and he just didn't for one reason or another. So I'd be worried about him, about a proper end-to-end gallop in the champion chase and then having to see it through. He might well be there or thereabouts in the frame, but he could be the type of horse that the likes of Master Chewy and Evan Williams' horse Liberty Hunter just kind of pip for those places after he's put in a big effort.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those markets, it will be a crackerjack of a betting heat in the without market, because every runner that's priced in behind it all the way through the field, you can pick holes in. And as much as I want to be able to build a confidence boosting bits, there are very few holes to pick in John Bon, other than the fact that he hasn't won at the Cheltenham Festival, which is, most of these horses haven't won at the Cheltenham Festival. So it's not exactly a positive for them either, is it? So I think he's good. Like I said, I'm still sat, I don't know where his price should sit, but even at Aintree last year when they stepped him up for the Mellon chase, he got smashed in the end, didn't he? And he's one of these that if he did end up being like a 2s on poke, especially considering other horses in the past have gone off at 4s on there, with respect to all of them, he is probably entitled to be a bit shorter, but there is something that's stopping me wanting to get royally stuck in at the sort of price that he is. Whereas, like I say, Coppet de Board's like of a similar type of price, whereas I'd much rather get involved in that one, which I don't even know if logical anymore, but like it's a really good race. I definitely feel like the cloud of sort of my subconscious knowing that the Champion Chase, I've had bets with Duvan Saturday, I've had bets with all of them when they've been short and they get turned over. Something underlines telling me you've been there before, don't put your finger in the plug socket again, I guess. And I want to get past that, because you do have to treat every race in its own right.
Yeah.
Definitely. So let's take a look at the Grand Annual, Will. We've talked about Liberty Hunter as a potential in that Champion Chase, depending on which way they go. Evan Williams did say after the Game Spirit run, we'll go Champion Chase, didn't he? I think I said Champion Hurdle or Champion Chase. I mean the Champion Chase, the Queen Mum. But he said but we'll take a look at the Grand Annual. So I love that, the committal, non-committal, just don't say anything type trainers. It's good for them to say their thoughts, though, because that's what's helpful, I think, that they're being open and honest that, off the back of that performance, I think he's Champion Chase option. And then they look at a handicap and think, actually, the way this pans out might make it different. And I think that's always the case with a Grand Annual, personally. This is one of the races that sometimes I'll get latched onto one, but if I do, I get latched onto them pretty much at the start of the season or very early on. If I don't have one of those types of horses, like an Unexpected Party from last year, who probably fits the same sort of mould again this year, because older horses have done okay in here, I tend to leave it till much nearer the event to try and figure out who's going to win this one. So in terms of horses that would be on my radar, and I think they'd be on everyone else's, it would be the obvious list of Jazzy Matty, Unexpected Party to an extent. I think that was it. I think they were the two that the King of Purrs is another one as well that I do quite like. But I didn't think he was well handicapped enough last time to go and win. So I didn't put him up. And then they've kept him fresh for this one, but I do think he's semi-interested. Half the Rue as well is another one that I think gets brought in a little bit here. He's probably one at a price. But this would be a race where I could, again, just list all the horses that are running and say they've got a chance, because obviously they have, because they've got an entry. But I have no bullish opinion in the Grand Annual this year. Nothing really jumps out to me from a pricey angle. So is there anything you could potentially help the viewers out with, Will?
Yeah, not really. I must admit, if I gave you too many words or time on this particular race right now, I'd probably be leading you down the wrong kind of path. I'll mention a couple of horses that are on the radar, but that's all they are. They're right on the outer reaches of the radar. That's all it is. I think this will be ground related as well, this race. They might not come here, but Liberty Hunter if it was soft. JPR1 if it stayed on the decent side of things and he doesn't run in the Champion Chase. Both of those two, if they don't run in the Champion Chase, of course. And then looking further down at some of the Irish horses, I thought all the Gavin Cromwell runners you've got to respect, definitely. Path the Rue, My Mate Mozzie, Midnight It Is, King of PRS. They're all worthy of respect, definitely. And one for Gordon Elliott that does have an entry in the Novices Limited Handicap Chase on day one over 2.5, but I think is a 2-miler all day long, and that's What's Up, Darling. Again, probably, ground related. I think he probably wants it slightly better. But again, whether he goes here, whether he gets a good mark, all up in the air, really, for me, this race.
Yeah, and I'll just touch on again the fact that we will be doing the live preview on the Sunday, the 9th, where we'll get more detail into the handicaps. At that point, we'll know much more about the ground. We won't have the entries there, but it should have sort of pieced itself up. And there will be some value in there somewhere. Obviously, something's going to shorten and potentially go and win the race. But even just looking at the non-runner money back markets for this one, I think there's probably like 15, 16 horses that are 10 to 1 non-runner money back. Obviously, they're not all going to run. And I know people are happy to tie some money up in there, but it isn't a race that screams out, get involved now to get the price. I think most of those horses will be bigger on the day. And it is a very like a race dependent thing. Even the makeup, like the pace angles, all those types of things as well. So yeah, I'd love to be able to give you the winner of the Grandad at this point, like we did 12 months ago, blow my own trumpet, but don't think I could do it. We'll have to just give it to him on the Sunday before instead, Will.
Yeah. They'll have to be patient.
That's it. We'll have to be patient. Right, the Champion Bumper. This is a good race this year, Will. I like it when there's sort of like some hype around some Willie Mullinsy type bumper horses. And even when we've had it with Gordon as well over the years, where it's been a horse that people talk about through the summer, like this will win the bumper. Then they come out and you just basically start seeing I guess it's like the birth of a new superstar. Yet this season, it's all been a little bit about what's won for Willie Mullins last. So Bambino Fever won at the Dublin Race Festival, went to the favourite. Then Copacabana came out for Patrick, which I did think was interesting because Fun was over here. He always gets involved with it wasn't there, but he stayed in Ireland to run Copacabana. It was weak in the market, then got supported. That's gone off we went down to favouritism, didn't it? Ruby Walsh was tipping that up as the champion bumper winner in a couple of previews. Since then, we've had another horse that's come out. Forget the name of the horse. It won yesterday, didn't it? The Professor Tilsdale runner. This is bad for a preview. I'll grab his
Game of Inches.
That's it.
Game
yes,
of Inches.
Game of Inches. And he looks good, but loads of people messaged me and said, "Wow, have you just seen Willie's in the bumper?" And I watched it back and I just thought, just Willie's in the bumper, and it's not. I didn't see anything godly there. But the two that I think are like the ones. It's not always from early in the season. I think lots of winners of this have come out and just won more recently, or their better forms towards the end of the season. But Calypso Chance, I feel really uncomfortable about the fact that Patrick rode him, right? And this, again, maybe I'm being weird with conspiracy theories, but I feel like it's like Ronaldo saying to Messi, do you want to train together before the match this weekend? Why would you let him in your camp on your best horse if, I don't know, I'm not saying like if there was something special or whatever. He's obviously done that to win that race. I just don't think that Gigginstown really care about the bumper. I don't think this horse has been was raced at that point with a view that, oh, we'll go and get him to win there. I think it was a case of he's won his races at the time that he's won them. I don't think he's been saved or got loads extra for this particular race. And I don't think they'll care how he gets on in a champion bumper. This will just be a stepping stone in his career that hopefully they make him into a Gold Cup horse like they buy every single one of the horses for. I do like him on figures and stuff. He's got a chance, but I feel like he's a frame horse rather than a winner of this race. The one I do think is solid, which is, I think, easy to say, is Win Beneath My Wings for David Pipe, because I was quite dismissive of what he did at Ascot first time up. Everyone got really excited about it. And I remember watching it back and thinking, begrudgingly, I was like, he actually did look quite good, didn't he? And I think what he did there, figures wise, is as good a performance in a bumper as anything on both sides of the sea's done in the past. I think the fact that he couldn't get another run into him and he's had to keep him fresh going into this is potentially a positive for him, because that was his first run for the yard. They know that he's a good horse. They're having to train him like he's a good horse. Whereas if they'd have run him in between and found out it was a little bit exposed, maybe they would have done things a little bit differently or decided to change things up or whatever it is. They could have overcomplicated it. So I think it's nice and simple for him. And obviously Pipe did really well with Moon Racer in the past. And I know it's like a loose thing to use. But the way that he talks about this horse, he's not saying he's better or even like confirmatively saying that he's as good as Moon Racer. But he's saying at the stage that they are now, what he's done, you'd have to say he's at least on a par with him. Obviously, time will tell how good he is. But Moon Racer was the horse that missed a bit of his novice days, didn't he? And then they ended up sending him into a champion hurdle as a novice. So, like, Pipe's not the type of horse to get over-egged about a horse in the slides. He keeps his lips quite sealed. So I think the talk about this horse looks quite good. I think in a year where we have had Willie Mullins' horse every week comes out going into a new favouritism, tells you all you need to know about the Irish depth this year. And the fact Calypso's Chance is still available at 7-1, despite the fact that he's got those big figures, despite the fact that Patrick rode him. Even Patrick's comments after were like, yeah, he's a nice horse. Like, he wasn't saying anything like extra aggressive about him. I think everyone knows this side of the sea and the other side of the sea that the best horse in the bumper this year is with the Brits. It's Win Beneath My Wings. The only other one from the Brits I think is semi-interested is No Drama This End for Nichols. Beat a really good horse of Skelton's. I say a really good horse. A horse I think is a very good prospect of Skelton's last time out. He could be interesting, but I'd want sort of 20-1 plus about him, and I'd want more places than just the three that are on offer at the moment. But Win Beneath My Wings would be the one that I fancy in the bumper. But again, it's a race that from a staking perspective, I'd never be having more than probably a point or a couple of points in a bumper. But my money will be going on Win Beneath My Wings this year, Will. How did you see this one? Am I being harsh on the Irish?
No, look, it's a race that I can't remember ever having a bet in, I must admit. And I don't know if this will change this year. So I'll just put that out there right now. It very much, it's a bit like a 2-year-old race on the flat to me at Royal Ascot, where, you know, if you see a decent 2-year-old performance 6 weeks beforehand, you might think, oh, that's an interesting horse. And you might think, well, 16-1, yeah, that's fair enough. And then over the weeks in between, horses come out and produce performances, and you think, not so confident now about that particular horse. And you look at the prices as well, the way things are priced up. I mean, the over round is massive, isn't it, with regards to these horses at this stage of where they're, you know, priced up. You're going to get better prices on the day without a shadow of a doubt for this. We're going to have a bit more information there might be another bumper winner come out, this weekend to just sort of put another cat amongst the pigeons. There's been a whole host of impressive ones of late. Yeah, it's a race that I'm not going to spend too much time on, I must admit, Dave.
Fair enough. Always good to be honest on these ones, because we can find you the winner in every single race, but whether we will or not, it's a different story, isn't it? But that does wrap up day 2, Will. Let's try do it again. It's going to get harder as the week goes on, although we've got Gallop and Deschamps to fall back to on Friday. But what would be your best bet for Wednesday, day 2 of the Cheltenham Festival? We're already having to think about it, haven't we?
Yeah, best bet. I think it would probably... I mean, it's not original, but in terms of a value bet, purely defining value, Ballyburn for me.
Yeah,
7-4 Ballyburn. That for me.
I'll be in agreement with that. So I'll just put something in slightly different, just for the fact that we might as well give a couple. Then I'd say the yellow clay is in a similar ilk of value, given the fact that if Gordon does decide to run him in this race, given how competitive it is, his price will definitely shorten up. So I think he's one that, especially from watching these previews a little bit earlier, I believe that this is the race that he'll go in, and I believe that he's overpriced on the fact that they think, or some people seem to think, he might go to the Albert Bartlett. Obviously, I could be wrong and he could end up going to that race, but if he does do that, non-runner money back, you don't lose anyway. If he does line up in a Turners, whatever the result, he will be going off shorter than he is now. I think he's 7 or 8 to 1 top price non-runner money back. So as Will stole my Ballyburn, I'm joking, I'll put the yellow clay in there. But yeah, Ballyburn's
I think there might be a few other people up and down the country that have stolen Ballyburn as well.
Yeah, that's true. But that's one of the other things. When the more of these previews that come out, when you see people saying horses' names and then the price doesn't start to shorten, it then makes you beg the question of what's going on in the works. Anyway, so that is day 2 done. Again, thanks for your support, especially if you stayed this late into the video. Make sure you drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back again very soon for day 3.